Training. If you've ever been involved in competitive sport, you'll most likely have been involved in training as well. But how do we know whether training is improving our fitness in the right way or helping us develop the right skills? It's all about choosing and using the right training strategies. People train for many reasons, such as general health and fitness, or it may be to improve performance in a specific sport or event. Regardless of the reason for training, it's important that a training program is suitable so the desired outcomes are achieved. For example, there's no point in a high jumper concentrating on building excessive upper body strength. It would most likely detract from his or her performance. Nor a cricketer undergoing the same training program as a sprinter. The levels and types of fitness needed are different, as are the skills. In this program, we're going to look at designing training programs for specific purposes. We'll explore different energy systems in the body, different types of training, and the principles of training, and how these all relate together in devising appropriate training strategies. First, we'll take a look at the body's energy systems. They're important to know about when it comes to planning training programs. The body converts the energy needed for physical activity in several different ways. There are 3 energy systems within the body. They all operate at any one time, but how much energy comes from each system depends on the timing and intensity of the activity. The energy used by muscles in physical activity is known as ATP, which is short for the chemical compound adenosine triphosphate. One system is the aerobic energy system. Oxygen is needed for the aerobic energy system. It's carried to the muscles by the blood. The oxygen in blood helps break down glucose to produce ATP, muscular energy. The aerobic energy system is the most efficient energy system in the body and the most sustainable. However, it also converts energy at a much slower rate than other systems. It takes about 2 minutes of activity before the aerobic energy system becomes the main converter of ATP during exercise. The second system is known as the anaerobic PC system. The PC stands for phosphocreatine, a chemical compound stored in muscles that converts ATP. It's also known as the phosphate energy system. It provides energy very quickly, but doesn't last long. This system provides the bulk of energy during powerful or explosive efforts, like starting off a sprint race, throwing a shot put, or bursting down the field in a football game. However, after about 10 or 15 seconds of explosive effort, the phosphate system in the body is depleted, and the body needs to reduce the intensity of the activity. That's why it's impossible to sprint over long distances. The other energy system in the body is the lactic acid or anaerobic glycolysis system. This system converts ATP from glucose in the muscles, but nowhere nearly as efficiently as is the case with aerobic energy conversion. The lactic acid system is responsible for most of the energy conversion in the period from around 15 seconds to 60 seconds of intense physical activity. One of the products of this energy system is lactic acid. When lactic acid builds up in the muscles faster than the body can get rid of it, an athlete is said to cross the anaerobic threshold.
Substitute!
At this point, it is impossible to continue activity at the same pace. Muscular effort must stop or slow down. This diagram shows how the body's three energy systems all work to convert energy for use by the muscles. The aerobic energy system, which can be sustained the longest, only becomes the main source of energy after the first couple of minutes of physical activity. One type of training which makes up part of virtually every athlete's program is continuous training. It's also the best and most popular type of training for general health and well-being. Continuous training is undertaking any activity requiring aerobic energy for at least 20 minutes. Commonly, it's jogging or power walking, cycling, or perhaps kayaking or cross-country skiing. Continuous training is submaximal. That is, it's not done at maximum intensity. To be effective, it needs to keep the heart beating at around 75% of its maximum heart rate. The purpose of continuous training is to improve the aerobic capacity. In other words, keep you going for longer when you're playing sport or competing. Remember, the aerobic energy system is the most efficient of the body's three energy systems. The better it performs, the fitter you are. Aerobic capacity is important for most sports: football, netball, hockey, athletics. An improved aerobic system means less recovery time after physical efforts, another important area of fitness for many popular sports. Continuous training also raises the anaerobic threshold. It takes longer to reach the point where lactic acid builds up in the muscles quicker than the body can get rid of it. The lactic acid energy system provides most of the energy for muscles between 15 and 60 seconds. So for events like the 400 metres in athletics, a high anaerobic threshold is vital because most of the energy used comes from the lactic acid system. There are three main types of continuous training: long, slow distance training, anaerobic threshold training, and fartlek training. Fartlek is a Swedish word meaning speed play. The first type, long, slow distance training, involves low-intensity aerobic exercise, like going for a jog or gently swimming laps in a pool. It is submaximal training, working at about 70% of maximum heart rate. This type of training gradually improves aerobic capacity. The second type, anaerobic threshold training, involves faster race-type activity, working at about 85% of maximum heart rate. Examples include faster, shorter runs, a range of training drills for team sports, or fast or uphill cycling. This type of training causes lactic acid buildup and is quite fatiguing, but it duplicates race or competition conditions. Fartlek training, the third type, involves continuous training, usually cross-country, with regular changes of pace. These might be due to natural obstacles like running up hills or in the sand, or they might be deliberately included in the training session, like short burst sprints during a jog. This type of training uses the aerobic system heavily, but also increases the reliance on the lactic acid system. Another type of training is interval training. This involves intervals of work followed by intervals of rest or recovery. Interval training is versatile and can be designed for specific energy systems. In interval training, the length and time of the work interval determines which energy system and fitness components are mostly trained. There are 3 types of interval training. The first is called long interval training. This might involve 1 to 3 minutes of physical effort, like running 400 or 800 metres, followed by 3 to 6 minutes of gentle exercise, like jogging, for recovery. Long interval training develops both aerobic and anaerobic energy systems. It is typically used by middle distance athletes, team game players, and athletes involved in sports with efforts of 1 to 6 minutes. Intermediate interval training is the second type of interval training. This type of training is designed to improve the lactic acid energy system. It might include physical efforts that last between 15 and 40 seconds, like 100 and 200 metre runs, with appropriate recovery stages. Intermediate interval training results in large build-ups of lactic acid in the muscles and must therefore be followed by recovery training or days of rest. The third type of interval training, short interval training, develops the PC energy system, which is essential for successful performance in virtually all team sports. Because intervals are shorter, work intensity is increased and recovery periods are longer. The variables affecting interval training then are the length of the work interval, the length of the recovery interval, the number of sets in the training program, and the number of repetitions in each set. The beauty of interval training is that it enables high-intensity work to be done without the fatigue that comes with a continuous training session of equal intensity. For example, it's like the difference between running 500 metres in 80 seconds and running 10 lots of 50 metres in 8 seconds each, with a 30-second recovery interval. Interval training is the best way to improve ability in team sports like netball, football, basketball or field hockey. These sports all involve periods of activity or work, like chasing an opponent or running with the ball, followed by periods of rest or recovery, like when the ball is a distance away. Resistance or weight training is another type of training. It aims to develop strength, power and local muscular endurance by exercising muscles against a resistance. The resistance can take a number of forms. There are 3 main types: isotonic, involving free weights; isometric, involving a fixed resistance, like flexing a muscle against a wall, or the crucifix position on the rings in gymnastics; and isokinetic, working against the resistance provided by a machine. Resistance training is one type of training where repetitions and sets are important. Repetitions, or reps, refer to the number of times an exercise is done in one go. Sets are groups of repetitions. For example, someone trying to build upper body strength in the shoulders and chest might use a bench press. They might do 5 repetitions of pressing a certain weight in each set. They might do 3 sets each time they train. Using the training principle of progressive overload, which we'll look at a bit later, the number of repetitions in each set, or the number of sets, can be increased over time. Resistance training is a vital part of sports-related fitness programs as it improves fitness and skill performance. It helps protect players against injury, and it improves body composition by increasing muscle tone and mass. Any sport that requires muscular strength, endurance and power should include resistance training in programs. In some cases, care needs to be taken. Too much increase in muscle mass can detract from performance, as we saw early in the program with the high jumper. A distance runner or swimmer would not want to build excessive upper body muscle, as it may ultimately impede on performance. A shot put or discus thrower, however, might specifically work on increasing upper body mass to gain more power for their events. Many team and ball sport athletes can benefit from resistance training. Rugby players who tackle and push away from opponents need muscular strength and power. Tennis and badminton players can benefit by increasing power in the upper body. And in sports like wrestling and competitive weightlifting, muscular strength and power are the main fitness components. The last type of training we'll look at is circuit training. It combines continuous and resistance training. Circuit training involves anywhere between around 5 and 15 workstations on a circuit. Circuit training helps to build strength, power, local muscular endurance and agility. When used for sports training programs, circuit exercises should use several muscle groups. Exercises that work the specific muscles required for the sport should be chosen. A volleyballer, for example, should include jumping and agility exercises in a circuit. Reps and sets at the various workstations can be progressively increased with circuit training. That is, increasing the number of reps in each set and/or increasing the number of sets done at the station. Understanding the principles of training is critical to gaining maximum benefit from a program. Each one is equally important. First, specificity, or the principle of replicating the physical activity in a sport or event in the training program. 4 things need to be considered here: the muscle groups used, the fitness components used, the skills performed, and the energy systems used. There's no point in a tennis player who needs to build agility, muscular power and endurance as well as aerobic fitness following a training program designed specifically for a marathon runner. The principle of duration refers to the period over which the program lasts. The minimum duration for aerobic improvement is anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks. For anaerobic improvement, noticeable changes should occur after around 6 to 8 weeks. Frequency is another principle. It refers to the number of training sessions needed per week to ensure improvement in fitness and the desired energy systems. The minimum training frequency for improvement in aerobic fitness is 3 to 5 times per week. It can increase in frequency as the level of aerobic fitness increases. However, it's not a case of simply training as often as possible. High intensity and contact activities need longer periods of recovery. Recovery time is just as important as the work time. The minimum training frequency for improvement in anaerobic fitness is 3 times per week, and up to 4 as improvement sets in. If it involves training for strength and power, the muscles need time to recover. Frequency in training is a case of finding the right balance between activity and recovery. Another training principle is intensity. It's a word we've used a bit already in this program. Intensity is the exertion level at which training is done. It's commonly measured as a percentage of maximum heart rate in beats per minute. Progressive overload is also an important training principle. As the body responds to the stress from training, it adapts to an increased workload. Progressive overload is then needed for further change, otherwise fitness and performance levels reach a plateau. A number of things in a training program can be increased to achieve effective progressive overload. These include distance over which work is done, time of the work, time of recovery, number of sets and repetitions, sessions per week, and amount of resistance. But not all variables should be changed at once. Diminishing returns is another principle of training. As fitness levels increase, the rate of improvement decreases. Unfit people make a very rapid improvement once they start a training program, but this rate doesn't last. For example, a 100-metre sprinter could reduce their time from 18 seconds to 12 seconds quite easily. But from that point, improvement would only be measured in tenths or hundredths of seconds. And a final word about training: warming up and cooling down are important parts of any training program. Stretching those parts of the body that will be stretched during training, moving joints, getting muscles used to the idea that they are about to be worked. Don't launch straight into a training session without warming up.
Okay guys, we need to do a warm down now. Get in the line.
Similarly, cooling down after a training session is equally important. The muscular, cardiovascular, respiratory and skeletal systems have all just been placed under a stressful workload. Get the muscles used to the idea that the session is finished. Don't finish a training session without cooling down.